When I realized there was all this public data available, I just started to have questions about the city that I live in.
Yeah.
We all walk around sort of maybe making assumptions about how a city works or life in a city, but with data we can actually go and quantify those assumptions. So I was very excited about that. With a blog, you can actually have a large audience. Obviously, an official can make laws sometimes. A legislator can change laws, or the mayor's office can change policy. But with a blog, I can at least inspire those officials to make decisions, and quite broadly. One of the advantages to blogging is that I don't have politics behind me. I'm not speaking for a corporation, and so I'm free to mix some opinion in sometimes clearly stated opinion, but also when I feel that something is unjust, I'm allowed to say that without damaging my reputation. You couldn't see the fire department can't complain about the police department, right? I mean, everyone has to get along, but if you're an outsider, you can kind of make some discoveries and communicate them without worrying about repercussion. Some of the legislators in New York City have reached out to discuss new laws up and coming, how to make data better.
Yeah.
But mostly, I haven't heard much from the executive branch or the mayor's office. So I wish to work more with them, but today there's no really good way to communicate back and forth. Unfortunately, very often my communication happens through the press. And I'd love a future where there were actual people in government agencies that you could communicate about data with. I would call those open data liaisons, and I would love to see them incorporated into our city agencies. I hope that I inspire the city to release more of their data. I want to show them that if they put the data out, great things can happen. Often cities and countries and government is sometimes scared to release a data set because of what might come out. They see it as being a watchdog, being looked over the shoulder all the time. And I really want to change that dialogue. I want to show that it's not about being watched, but it's about a partnership. And so if I can start to start with small things, but make city life better and show them that the data they can work with citizens to make life, it's a better democracy. So that's kind of my goal. Yeah. Often people release data and they just dump whatever garbage they have. So one of my calls to action is that when government thinks about data and cleans it up before releasing it, the impact will be much, much larger. If it instead relies on the people using it to do it, each individual user needs to make the changes, needs to fix, needs to clean the problems. And so if you have 1,000 users, you're wasting 1,000 people's time. But if you do it at the source, then it's only one person has to fix it. So your effect is basically multiplied by 1,000 times. So I talk about not using PDF files to release data, and making sure that things are searchable and findable. And I think once we see more of that, we'll see more of the open data movement grow. Certainly, there are all sorts of privacy concerns when it comes to open data. Governments need to be careful about what kind of information they put out. That being said, a lot of things can be anonymized in a way that's clean and makes it sort of okay to release. I think often everyone's instinct is to err on the side of being closed because that's the safest thing to do. But I challenge our governments to think creatively about how to anonymize data and yet be able to release it. But certainly not everything should be released in the world. I think as the cloud infrastructure grows, what's intriguing is that things like storing data becomes very, very cheap and distributed, and you'll be able to do analysis on giant data sets with thousands of CPUs just from your laptop at home. So I see that as that combined with new tools will kind of empower anyone to start to ask questions of very, very large complex data sets because their little laptop can connect to a very large infrastructure. And that's what excites me the most right now. Yeah, certainly people can use data to tell different stories. Everyone has a view. Anytime somebody uses data, they're coming in with their own viewpoint. And so someone might use one data set to tell one story and someone might use the same data set to tell the other. So often you hear governments say, well, I don't want to release the data because people are going to abuse it or use it. I would say that part of what makes a democracy great is the idea that people can, the smartest voice kind of wins out. So in a world where everything's closed, you might say something, but nobody can verify it. but a world where somebody does something that doesn't make any sense with the data, now others can follow up and say, hey, wait a minute, I can look at this and make my own analysis. And I think that ends up making smarter conversation. So when bad things happen, I think good things will follow. The fact that there's even an open data website is a great step forward. I saw maybe a dozen or so data sets, including the fruit trees here, and was able to analyze where there were apple trees versus walnut trees. The data was put forward in a open format, which allowed me to, from my hotel room, analyze things quite quickly. So I was very impressed with that. The fact that it was even there, and the fact that there was data there. Now, is there a lot of data? Not yet. You're not seeing things like police, crimes and things like that, but it's a start. We see a lot of infrastructure, like tells you where the streetlights are, and where the salt storage units are, for the winter. So we see infrastructure starting, but I'd love to see more, city service data over time grow there.